Look for the Multilink logo on your card and benefit from Jamaica's largest debit payment network. Multilink, 24/7 access for me.
What would I do without my Multilink?
Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Nationwide at 5. It's a Thursday, right? Yes, it is a Thursday afternoon. It's the 12th day of June, 2025. My name is Ricardo Brooks.
My name is Sanjay Lewis. Ricardo Brooks, you sound happy today. I almost think it was Friday. What's happening?
No, Dana and Bugs giving me a joke.
Okay.
Yeah. In the cover story this afternoon, Jamaica is no longer considered high risk. That's according to the European Union. Now, it's not considered a high risk jurisdiction, the country, for money laundering and financing terrorism. And that's according to a latest European Commission list of jurisdictions presenting strategic deficiencies in national anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism regimes. The updated list was published on Tuesday. Here's Mahiri Stewart's report.
In addition to Jamaica, Barbados, Gibraltar, Panama, the Philippines, Senegal, Uganda, and the United Arab Emirates have also been delisted. Meanwhile, a number of third country jurisdictions have been added to the list. They are Algeria, Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Laos, Lebanon, Monaco, Namibia, Nepal, and Venezuela. The Commission says the updated list takes into account the work of the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, in particular, its list of jurisdictions under increased monitoring. As a founding member of FATF, the Commission is closely involved in monitoring the progress of the listed jurisdictions and helping them to fully implement action plans agreed with FATF. The Commission says it has carefully considered the concerns expressed regarding its previous proposal. It says it conducted a thorough technical assessment based on specific criteria and a well-defined methodology. It says it incorporated information collected through FATF, bilateral dialogues, and on-site visits to the jurisdictions in question. Article 9 of the 4th Anti-Money Laundering Directive mandates the Commission to regularly update the list of high-risk third country jurisdictions. The update of the list enters into force after scrutiny and non-objection of the European Parliament and the Council, usually within a month. In 2023, following amendments to the Special Economic Zones Act, (CESA), the EU removed Jamaica from its list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. The amendment to the CESA ensured Jamaica conformed with international standards of tax transparency, which were related to preferential tax regimes. Jamaica was removed from FATF's grey list last year. Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
Thanks, Mahiri. So joining us now to discuss further is the Senior Director of Legal Services and General Counsel at the Financial Investigations Division, Courtney Smith. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brooks and Mr. Lewis. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Good, thank
Wonderful.
you.
So let me hear your initial reaction to Jamaica being removed from the EU list. What does this mean for the country?
This is fantastic news. It's a welcome and hard-earned milestone for us. It reflects years of sustained effort, truly national achievement. All agencies in Jamaica, related agencies, put hands and heart together. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it demonstrates that Jamaicans take our financial system integrity seriously, and it validates our alignment with global standards concerning anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. So it's fantastic news. Mm-hmm. Job well done, Jamaica.
And for the ordinary Jamaican, we hear things like FATF and that kind of thing. Bring it down to the level of everyday life. What does that mean for me, for example, if I want to shop online? A lot of Jamaicans do that. What does that mean?
Well, it just means with the enhanced monitoring that we were under, it just meant it was more difficult for us to conduct those basic day-to-day transactions because the banks that we use would have been under enhanced scrutiny. So when if a transaction would have normally been on a degree of difficulty 3, for example, just to pick a number, because of the enhanced due diligence, you're closer to 10. So it would cost more. It would be more time consuming because now each transaction had to be vetted in a more serious way because what that listing meant was that we were at a high risk for terrorism financing and money laundering, even though we don't traditionally have a history of terrorism, but the risk of terrorism proceeds passing through our financial institutions, that blacklist meant that risk was very high. So it was harder for everyday traditional transactions to take place.
So, for example, if I was sending a wire transfer, let's say from Jamaica to the United States, the banks who are accepting that wire would have to put extra measures in place just to ensure that we were following the necessary procedures?
Certainly, and they would have to do what we call in the industry enhanced due diligence. They would have to ask more stringent questions than they would normally have to do if you weren't on any of those lists.
Mm-hmm.
So the
now that
itself was more difficult.
Right. So now that we have been removed from the list, it basically ensures that it's much easier for us to do simple transactions like a wire transfer without all those safeguards in place.
We're not talking about removing the safeguards because once if you remove the safeguards,
well, the extra layer, then, so to speak.
Right. So we're now at the standard requirement. I believe we should see it transitioning over time to make it a little bit more relaxed, but not to the extent. Everybody, we're now on the same level playing field as everybody, I would presume now, based on this relisting or delisting.
And I don't know if you've realized, Mr. Smith, but in recent times, your division has been in the news. And one of the claims has been that, Jamaica's international financial reputation was at risk. How do you assess the situation as it relates to our international financial reputation?
Well, without commenting on what has been in the news, and based solely on the work that Jamaicans have put in over the past 5 years or so, and the national risk assessments that we have done, we have identified our risks, we have put things in place to first get us off the FATF grey list and now off the EU blacklist. And Jamaica is committed, the law enforcement professionals, including the FID, are committed to carrying out all the things that we need to carry out to ensure or to make it less likely for us to end up on those lists.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So outside of whatever else might be in the news, which we are not able to comment on or speculate about, the work has been done. The Prime Contact Secretariat and at the BOJ and all other related bodies are taking this anti-money laundering, countering financing terrorism issue seriously. And we have put in the work over the last 5 years or so, at least since 2021, when the first national risk assessment was completed and it identified our risks and we put things in place to address those risks.
Would you describe, if I could just follow up, would you describe our international financial reputation as strong?
We would have to. If the standard for determining that we were a money laundering risk was our placement on the list, I would have to follow that argument or follow that logic to say putting in the work to get removed from the list without any special favors being called in or so. The work was done. We would have to say that means that our effectiveness is recognized internationally, that our laws are in place and they're up to international standards, and that the enforcement of same is equally up to standard. The sharing of intelligence and assisting other nationalities and other nations in combating their own anti-money laundering, countering financing terrorism risks is there, because that's a part of the test as well. Do we cooperate with other countries in ridding the world of anti-money laundering and terrorism financing? And that is a part of what being removed from the blacklist and the grey list last year. That's what it means.
Yeah, we're speaking with the Senior Director of Legal Services and General Counsel at the Financial Investigations Division, that's the FID, Courtney Smith, discussing this good news for Jamaica, Jamaica being removed from that list and no longer high risk, according to the EU. And just before the break, Mr. Smith, I was talking about Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark, talking to the Parliament about the need for us to be removed from this list. Talk to us about the coordination that took place in order for Jamaica to be removed from this list.
Certainly. There was a lot of, locally first, multi-agency task force. There's a national anti-money laundering committee headed by the prime contact and her secretariat located at the BOJ. That team comprises of law enforcement, regulatory bodies, and so on, that knocked heads together over long hours, many days and nights, did the research, wrote the reports, participated in the national risk assessment process, wrote that 2021 national risk assessment, which triggered all of this, and just putting all our years of training and experience together to identify Jamaica's problems and point to possible solutions on how we could work through that process. There was also the intergovernmental memberships and attendance at international plenaries and meetings, training sessions to upskill, and even in satisfying this requirement, we were also actively participating in offering training locally and across the Caribbean to all levels of personnel involved in anti-money laundering, countering financing of terrorism, including law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, and the like across the Caribbean. So Jamaica did put in the work. Legislative changes were also prioritized. The relevant laws were passed, and to the standard sufficient to satisfy these bodies that our laws are comprehensive. And when it came to enforcing them, we proved effectiveness, and it's a continuous process that we have to keep proving that effectiveness. A part of what made this possible too was the way in which the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee went about telling Jamaica's story, so things that persons would look at and determine that this was a high risk for money laundering and terrorism financing, for example. Mm-hmm. We were able to tell Jamaica's story to show how, yes, though some of these things appear to exist, the risk is really low because of ABC 1, 2, 3, and we're able to tell that story in such a way, and that we convinced and were able to convince and show evidence, because it's not just about spinning a story and spinning a web.
Yes.
We had to show evidence about everything we were saying. Yeah. And the research was done, the evidence was shown, and we satisfied our international partners of our effectiveness and our willingness and ability to live in this anti-money laundering space.
The EU mentions strategic deficiencies, Mr. Smith, and as you were saying just now, you had to show and tell. You couldn't just tell them that you'd address them, you had to show them how. And I was wondering, what were some of those strategic deficiencies, and how did you go about addressing them sufficient that the EU could say, okay, we can be removed from this list? Mr. Smith? No. Seems we lost him. We're talking to Courtney Smith. He is the General Counsel and Senior Director of Legal Services at the Financial Investigations Division. Some good news coming in for Jamaica. The country is no longer considered a high-risk jurisdiction for money laundering and financing terrorism by that list coming from the European Union. The European Commission list of jurisdiction was released recently.
And Ricardo, some stakeholders have previously argued that Caribbean countries, including Jamaica have been held to a higher compliance standards than larger jurisdictions. And I wanted to hear Mr. Smith on that one, because many individuals have said that's the case. We were not treated the same as the larger jurisdictions.
And it's interesting you say that, Sanjay, because I don't think it's only a matter of the prominence of the country or the economy, but also there's been a racial argument that's been raised
Yes.
that minority countries are often punished and singled out. So yes, I would be interested in hearing Mr. Smith's answer to that. Our producer still trying to make contact with him. But
And to be fair also, Ricardo, our laws, and I remember last week the Constitutional Affairs Minister said it, Jamaica, for the most part, we have set laws that are intact, they're stringent. So I find it very surprising that the EU to begin with would have said that Jamaica's laws were not stringent enough to deal with the issues of anti-money laundering.
yeah, Mr. Smith, are you back with us?
I'm back with you.
Yes.
Sorry
Oh,
about
wonderful.
that.
No, not a problem. Did you hear the question I posed before we lost you?
No, could you repeat, please?
Right. So I was saying that the EU mentioned strategic deficiencies, right? That they had previously identified some of them. And in response to Sanjay, you were making the point that you didn't only tell the EU how you had addressed them, but you also showed, you had to give the evidence that you had in fact addressed these so-called strategic deficiencies. And I wondered, what were some of those and how did you go about making that case that they were addressed?
The thing with the EU blacklist is that it really mirrors the FATF grey list that we were on.
Oh, so it's just a mirroring.
And came
Okay.
off in 2024. So from a strategic perspective, whoever is on the FATF grey list went on the EU blacklist.
I see.
So when we saw that we did the work and came off the grey list, we knew it was really we anticipated that was a matter of time that we would come off. Now, what was happening prior to coming off the grey list was that there were certain deficiencies, for want of a better term, that were identified, involving certain laws related, for example, to the secrecy surrounding beneficial ownership of companies and so on. That law was changed during this time period. There was also, so the Companies Act was amended to compel disclosure of those benefits.
If I could interrupt Mr. Smith, because I just want the listeners to properly understand it. So you're saying, for example, if disclosures about who owns a company or beneficial ownership, they're saying that those things could be used to mask the financing of terrorism, because if you don't know who it is, then conceivably it could be a terrorist.
Certainly. So now Jamaica has put laws in place to make sure that it's not possible or it's not permitted. That's a better word. It's not permitted for somebody to own a company for somebody else without disclosing who that other person is.
I see.
Another key problem was that the attorneys were not compelled and compellable to report suspicious transactions involving their clients. And during that period, and interestingly, during the period, it was heavily litigated and it went all the way to the
Privy Council. Yes, I recall that ruling.
Yes, and even whilst we were waiting on that ruling, the FATF and our international partners, they appreciated that we had to await the decision, but were insistent that that was a no-no because attorneys pose a significant risk worldwide. Attorneys have the skill sets, etc., that and the reach and the access that can be abused. So that was one of the things that was viewed as a deficiency. And we have resolved those.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you find, Courtney, that Jamaica and the Caribbean have been held at a much higher standard, and also there was a lack of understanding of the legislation that we had in place, which is why we were placed on that list by the EU?
I would not want to say that because the laws were studied and explained as part of the process. So persons had a full understanding of what the laws were saying. Some of it may be due to cultural differences where we in the Caribbean don't look on certain things as a problem. So, everything Irie and Jamaica, no problem. But then when we when we go on the international scale and we want to do business with our international partners who traditionally experience a bombing of a school bus every now and again, or some other serious infraction involving massive loss of life, and then now the need to manage the financial sector to prevent the funding of that type of activity is more serious.
Yeah.
To them, we not experiencing those things on a daily basis had to quickly understand the cultural requirements and as to why these things needed to be in place.
There's the other element now, Courtney, of remaining off that list. What are some of the things that Jamaica have put in place just to ensure that we're keeping in touch, keeping informed with what is happening, and making the changes proactively so that we will never go back on that list?
We just need to recognize that what we're doing from a law enforcement perspective has put us on the road to ensuring, at least from that perspective, that Jamaica will become the place to live, work, raise families, and do business. We're setting the framework for a stable financial sector, and what we need to do is to continue to maintain it. Maintaining it meaning we have to do continuous monitoring and updating our national anti-money laundering strategy, which is what we're actually doing now. And another risk assessment is being done, and we're upgrading and updating the 2021 version. So that's a commitment that we have taken to say we need to consistently and constantly review Jamaica's risks and put things in place to mitigate them. We also engage in regular training and audits across all regulated sectors. There's ongoing collaboration with our international partners as well. There's mutual supervision, intelligence sharing, investigations, and asset recovery, which means we have to continuously become effective at finding the proceeds of crime and taking them from those that have committed crime to earn them, and then now applying those proceeds towards helping us to bolster our system. And a part of that will require that we leverage technology to improve general compliance and oversight, and even the detection, prosecution of crimes and asset recovery generally.
Yeah. Courtney Smith, we're out of time. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time this afternoon. Courtney Smith is Senior Director of Legal Services and General Counsel at the Financial Investigations Division. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Have a good one.
All the very best.